Hey guys, I never thought I'd find myself writing something like this, but here I am. I've been married to Olivia for 6 years, and overall it's been okay. Not a fairy tale romance, but steady enough that I thought we were on the same page. We met in DC, fell for each other at a cozy wine bar in Georgetown, and built a life together. She works in PR for a big firm downtown, and I'm a systems analyst for a government contractor. Our lives are busy, but I thought we were managing just fine. About 3 months ago, though, things started to feel off. Olivia's always been the social type, but suddenly she was out more often than usual. Happy hours or client dinners became a weekly, sometimes even more frequent occurrence. When I brought it up, she brushed it off, laughing and saying, "You're being paranoid." Except I wasn't joking. Then there was Jackson. Just a name at first, a coworker she'd mentioned casually once in a while. Jackson said the funniest thing today, or Jackson nailed that presentation. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then his name kept coming up, almost too often, sprinkled into conversations as if it were nothing. When I mentioned it, she got defensive. "Don't be that guy," she said, rolling her eyes. It wasn't just the name dropping, though, it was other things too. She started dressing up more than usual, like heels and lipstick for an average workday. Maybe not a big deal on its own. But paired with late nights, mysterious texts, which were always waved off as work stuff, and this new habit of leaving her phone face down, I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my gut. At the time, I was able to avoid FaceTime. None of my ex girlfriends used texting. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, but then her behavior towards me began to change. Olivia has always been strong willed, some might say bossy, but lately her attitude turned colder. She'd make snarky comments about me not making an effort or criticize random things that never used to be an issue, like how I fold the laundry or even the way I chew. It all started to add up. But I kept doubting myself. Was I just being insecure? Was I blowing this all out of proportion? Still, that uneasy feeling stayed with me every time she left the house. It was like there was this invisible crack running through our life together, and I just couldn't put my finger on it. I decided to stay vigilant, to observe rather than accuse. I didn't want to jump to conclusions without any real proof. But deep down, my gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. And that's where it all began, with just a hunch. As you'll see, it didn't take long for me to realize my instincts were right all along. This is where things start to get real. Like I mentioned, I had my suspicions, but I wasn't about to blow everything up without solid evidence. So I did what any overthinker would do. I stayed quiet and started paying closer attention. The first red flag popped up on a random Thursday night. Olivia had another client dinner downtown. She left in a rush, hair perfectly done, makeup on point, and wearing that little black dress that always turns heads. I couldn't help but think it was a bit much for a work dinner. I mean, PR people don't usually need to look like they're heading to a gala just to impress clients. I tried to shake it off, but it stuck with me. She said she'd be back by 9:30. By 10:15, I sent her a quick text, "Hey, everything okay?" 10 minutes later, she replied, "Still wrapping up. Be home soon." Fair enough. But when she finally walked through the door at 11:45, something was off. Her face was flushed, like she'd been running or doing something else. I asked how the dinner went, and she just shrugged it off with, "Ugh, so boring," before disappearing into the bathroom. Then came the second clue, and this one hit me like a truck. A week after that late night, I decided to grab lunch at this new burger place near my office. It was crowded, but I managed to snag a spot in the back. I was minding my own business, scrolling through emails, when I heard a laugh. Not just any laugh, her laugh. I looked up, and my stomach dropped. There she was, Olivia, sitting at a corner booth with Jackson. They were leaning in close, laughing like they were sharing the world's greatest secret. Her hand was on his arm, and she was looking at him like he was the most charming guy alive. My heart started pounding. For a split second, I thought about walking right over there, but I didn't. Instead, I slouched lower in my seat, tugged my baseball cap down, and just watched. They stayed there for another 20 minutes, completely in their own little bubble. When the check came, Jackson picked it up without hesitation, no awkward bill splitting. As they got up to leave, Olivia touched his arm again, her laugh trailing behind her like a dagger straight to my gut. I didn't move until they were long gone. When I finally got up, my burger was cold and my appetite had disappeared. On the walk back to my office, the whole scene replayed in my mind on a loop. I couldn't believe what I'd just seen, but at the same time, it felt like the confirmation I'd been dreading. That night, I didn't confront Olivia. She came home, kissed me on the cheek, and casually chatted about her long day at work like nothing was wrong. I just nodded, pretending to listen while my brain went into overdrive. What was I supposed to do? Call her out right then and there? Or keep playing it cool until I had more answers? I decided to stay quiet. At least for now. If Olivia was lying to me, I needed to know just how far this went. One thing was clear. I couldn't rush this. Whatever I did next had to be deliberate and well thought out. So I started making a plan. After what I saw at the burger place, there was no way I could just sit back and let this all play out. I needed a plan. But let me be clear, this wasn't just about catching Olivia and Jackson in the act. This was about making Olivia feel exactly how I was feeling. Betrayed, blindsided, and utterly humiliated. Enter Ava, Olivia's best friend, practically her sister. They've been inseparable since college, and she's always been a huge part of our lives. Ava is smart, funny, stunning, and most importantly, completely loyal to Olivia. That's why what I was planning was so risky. If it backfired, I wouldn't just lose Olivia, and let's be real, I wasn't too concerned about that anymore, but Ava would side with her in an instant. I'd be painted as the bad guy. To be honest, I already felt like the bad guy for even thinking about it. But here's the thing. Ava and I had always gotten along too well, maybe. There was this natural chemistry between us that I'd ignored out of respect for my marriage. But now, that chemistry felt like a weapon I could use. The plan was simple. Get close to Ava, not in some sleazy, obvious way, just enough to make Olivia notice, enough to make her wonder, maybe even feel a little jealous. If Olivia could have Jackson, her work husband, then maybe I could have Ava. I started small. The next time Olivia dragged me to one of her brunches with Ava, I made a point to talk to her more than usual. We bonded over shared interests. Books, movies, the nightmare that is DC traffic. I cracked some jokes and Ava laughed. I could tell she was enjoying the attention. Olivia didn't seem to notice at first, but I did. Ava's eyes lingered on me a little longer than they should have, and her smile was warmer than I expected. From there, I stepped it up. I started texting Ava. Nothing sketchy at first, just casual stuff. Hey, do you remember the name of that show you mentioned at brunch? Or Olivia said you know a good hiking trail near Great Falls. Mind sharing? She always responded quickly and seemed eager to help. Soon the texts became more frequent and personal. What's the hardest part of your job? I'd ask. Or if you could live anywhere outside DC, where would it be? The more we talked, the more I realized something. Ava was everything Olivia wasn't. She was kind, genuine, and supportive. This wasn't just someone I was using to get back on Olivia. I actually liked Ava. Maybe more than I should have. But I had to stay focused. This wasn't about falling for Ava. This was about sending a message to Olivia. So I kept going, carefully building a connection with Ava while pretending everything at home was perfectly fine. Olivia, for her part, didn't seem to notice. She was too preoccupied with her work dinners and endless excuses to see what I was doing right under her nose. Still, I knew I was walking a very thin line. If Ava figured out what I was up to, if Olivia caught on, or if Jackson somehow got wind of it all, well, it could all blow up in my face. But at that point, I didn't care. I was all in. Next, I needed to see just how far I could push things without crossing a line. This wasn't just about waiting for Olivia to slip up. It was about setting the stage for her fall. And honestly, guys, it felt damn good to finally take control of the situation. It didn't take long for my plan to gain momentum. Ava was texting back faster, her replies warmer, and I could tell she was enjoying the attention. I wasn't outright flirting, not yet, but I was definitely towing the line between friendly and interested. The thing about Ava is that she's sharp, almost too sharp. I had to tread carefully. If I wasn't subtle enough, she'd see through me. The first real step came when I asked her to grab coffee. I played it casual, no big deal, just a chance to get her advice on some career stuff. Nothing suspicious, she agreed right away, and I couldn't help but wonder if she felt the same pull I did. We met at this quaint little coffee shop in DuPont Circle, the kind with mismatched furniture and overpriced lattes. Ava looked incredible, of course, just jeans and a sweater, but somehow she made it look effortlessly stylish. Fun, I felt nervous, which caught me off guard. This wasn't supposed to be a date, or was it? Conversation with Ava was always easy, and this time was no different. She talked about work, her family back in New York, and how frustrating the DC dating scene could be. I nodded, chimed in where it felt right, but in the back of my mind, I was thinking about Olivia. Where was she? What excuse would she come up with tonight? And more importantly, would she even care if she knew where I was? When I brought up Olivia, Ava's expression shifted slightly. "How's she doing?" she asked, her tone light but probing. "She's busy," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant. "You know how she is, always on the go." Ava gave a faint smile, but there was something behind it. A flicker of doubt or concern. Did she know? Did she suspect? I decided to test the waters. "It's been hard," I added, staring at my coffee like it held the answers. "It feels like we're living separate lives lately." Ava's brows knit together in a small frown. "I'm sorry to hear that, Adam. I didn't know things were tough between you two." "It's not your fault," I said quickly, shaking my head. "I guess we've just lost some of what made us, well, us." For a moment, Ava didn't say anything, and I wondered if I'd crossed a line, but then she reached out and touched my hand briefly, just enough for me to notice. "You're a good guy, Adam," she said softly. "I'm sure you'll figure it out." The warmth of her touch lingered longer than it should have, and for the first time, I wondered if there was more to her words than she was letting on. When we said goodbye, Ava hugged me. Not one of those quick, half-hearted hugs, but something longer, deeper. I caught the faint scent of her perfume as she pulled away, and it stayed with me as she walked off. "Take care of yourself," she said quietly, looking back one last time. That night, Olivia came home late again, practically bouncing with excitement. She tossed her bag on the couch and launched into some story about great news from work. I smiled, nodded, and acted like I cared, but all I could think about was Ava and the way her hand had felt in mine. I knew I was walking a dangerous line, but I didn't care. If Olivia thought she could live a double life, she was about to learn how it feels to be on the other side. This is where the tide started to turn, guys. Up until this point, everything had been subtle. Olivia sneaking around and pretending everything was fine, and me slowly building a connection with Ava. But after that coffee meetup, things with Ava began shifting in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. Ava started texting me first. At first, it was lighthearted, a funny meme, a book recommendation, or a quick, "How's your day going?" But then the messages started to go deeper. She asked about my feelings, my marriage. "Have you talked to Olivia about how you're feeling?" she texted once. That question hit me like a gut punch. Ava genuinely seemed to care, and for the first time I hated that I was using her to prove a point. Meanwhile, Olivia was beginning to notice that I wasn't the same. Maybe it was because I'd stopped waiting up for her when she came home late, or because I wasn't pretending to be engaged in her work stories anymore. Whatever it was, she could sense the shift, and it was throwing her off. So, one night as we were getting ready for bed, she confronted me. "You've been acting weird lately," she said, watching me carefully. "Is something going on?" I shrugged casually. "I could ask you the same thing." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're out all the time, Olivia. You barely talk to me unless it's about work or one of your client dinners." I paused, locking eyes with her. Should I be worried? She laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh my God, Adam, you're being ridiculous. You know how busy I am. Stop being so insecure." That word, insecure, stuck in my brain like a thorn. She always used it to shut me down, to make me feel like I was the problem. Not this time. I didn't push the conversation further. There was no point. I just nodded, gave her a faint smile, and let her think she'd won. Be titled "A Small Career in Living in California" for a week. But meanwhile, Ava and I were getting closer. One Friday evening, Olivia was working late again, so I texted Ava on a whim asking if she wanted to grab dinner. It wasn't part of any grand plan, it just felt like the right thing to do. She said yes, and we met at a casual spot in Logan Circle. Dinner with Ava felt easy. Too easy. We talked about everything: work, family, childhood memories. She admitted that she'd been so feeling lonely lately, especially since Olivia had been so distant. She's always so busy, Ava said, sipping her wine. I barely hear from her anymore. I nodded, biting back the bitterness threatening to surface. Yeah, I know the feeling. At one point, Ava looked at me with this mix of concern and sincerity and said, Adam, I hate seeing you like this. You deserve better. Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't sure if she meant them as a friend or something more, but either way, they stuck with me. In that moment, I realized something that terrified me. Ava wasn't just a pawn in my revenge plan anymore. She was someone I genuinely cared about. When I got home that night, Olivia was already in bed, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up when I walked in. Have fun with your career stuff? She asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I didn't answer. I just got into bed, turned off the light, and stared at the ceiling. Things were shifting, and the tension was building, like the calm before a storm. Things took an unexpected turn after that dinner with Ava. I didn't realize it right away, but Olivia was starting to sense that something was different. Maybe it was the way I stopped hanging on her every word, or the fact that her late nights didn't seem to bother me anymore. Or maybe it was because of Ava. Here's the thing about Olivia. She thrives on being the center of attention. Even when she's giving you scraps, she expects you to orbit around her like she's the sun. So when I stopped orbiting, it clearly got under her skin. It started small. One evening, Ava texted me while Olivia and I were sitting on the couch. I glanced at my phone, smiled faintly, and put it back down. Olivia, who had been scrolling through her own phone, suddenly looked up. Who's that? She asked, her tone casual, but her eyes were sharp. Just Ava, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. She's recommending a book she thinks I'd like. Olivia's brow furrowed slightly, and for a moment, she looked genuinely thrown. Ava? Since when did you two text each other? We've been talking a little, I said, not looking up. She's been a good friend to me lately. A friend? Olivia repeated, the sarcasm unmistakable. That's interesting. I could feel the tension shift, but I didn't react. I just shrugged and went back to watching TV. If she wanted to dig deeper, she'd have to take the first step. Over the next few days, her jealousy became more obvious. She started asking pointed questions like, have you seen Ava lately? Or what exactly do you two talk about? I kept my answers short and vague, knowing it would drive her insane. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I'd just gotten back from a hike with Ava. We'd gone to Great Falls, spent hours talking, and it was honestly one of the best days I'd had in a long time. When I walked through the door, Olivia was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, her expression unreadable. Where were you? She asked. Out, I said casually, dropping my keys on the counter. With Ava? Yes, I replied without hesitation. We went hiking. It was nice. Her eyes narrowed, and for a second I thought she might explode. Instead, she let out a short, bitter laugh. Wow, you're spending a lot of time with her lately, huh? Is there something I should know? I met her gaze, completely calm. Funny, I was going to ask you the same thing about Jackson. Face fell, and for the briefest moment I saw panic flash across her eyes. But she quickly masked it with anger. That's ridiculous, Adam. Jackson is a coworker. We work together. That's it. Sure, I said, my tone heavy with sarcasm. Just like Ava and I are just friends. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. Olivia opened her mouth to respond, but then closed it again, clearly scrambling for words. For the first time in months, I felt like I had the upper hand, and honestly, it felt incredible. That night, Olivia was unusually quiet. She kept sneaking glances at me, like she was trying to figure out what was going on in my head. Meanwhile, I acted like nothing had happened, going about my evening without a care. If she wanted to stew in doubt and insecurity, I was more than happy to let her. This is where things really started to fall apart for Olivia, and where I finally got to watch her perfect little world crumble under the weight of her lies. A week after our tense conversation, Olivia's behavior shifted again. She was still trying to act normal, but I could tell she was rattled. Her phone was practically glued to her hand, and every time it buzzed, she jumped, like she'd been caught red-handed. One night, while she was in the shower, I noticed her phone light up on the counter. A text from Jackson popped up. "Can't do this anymore. We need to talk." I stared at the message, my heart racing. This could be the break I've been waiting for. But before I could process it fully, I heard the water turn off. So I quickly slipped out of the bathroom and acted like nothing had happened. Over the next few days, Olivia was noticeably distracted. She barely spoke to me, and when she did, her tone was sharp and defensive. I knew something was going on with Jackson, and I had a feeling he was trying to distance himself. Sure enough, a couple of nights later, Olivia got dressed up and announced she was going out for drinks with the team. I just nodded and said, "Have fun." She shot me a look like she was trying to figure out if I believed her, but I kept my expression neutral. When she came home late that night, her mood was sour and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. I asked how her night went, and she snapped, "Fine," before storming off to the bedroom. I didn't push her. She was unraveling all on her own, and I wasn't about to make it easier for her. The next morning, she left early for work without a word. That's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. Up until now, Jackson had been a convenient pawn in this game, but now that he was pulling away, I needed to know why. I sent him a simple message. "Hey, Jackson, can we talk? I think we have some things we should clear up." To my surprise, he replied almost immediately, "Sure, let me know when." We met that afternoon at a quiet coffee shop in DuPont Circle. Jackson looked uncomfortable the moment I walked in, fidgeting with his phone, avoiding eye contact. "What's this about?" he asked, barely meeting my eyes. I got straight to the point. "I know about you and Olivia." His face went pale. "What?" I don't bother denying it," I cut him off. "I've seen enough. I'm not here to fight. I just want to understand." Jackson sighed and rubbed his temples. "Look, man, it's not what you think. It was stupid. I should have never. Look, it's over, okay?" I told her I can't do this anymore. "Why?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. "Wind it now." "She's intense," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "At first, it was fun, just harmless flirting. Then it escalated, and before I knew it, I was in way over my head. She's been calling and texting me nonstop. It's too much. I told her I'm done." I nodded, letting his words sink in. Olivia's little affair wasn't just unraveling, it was imploding. Part of me felt a sliver of pity for Jackson, but mostly, I felt vindicated. "Thanks for being honest," I said as I stood to leave. "And for what it's worth, you made the right call." Walking out of that coffee shop, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in months. Olivia's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, and now it was just a matter of time before the whole truth came out. Olivia's unraveling went from subtle cracks to a full-blown implosion. After my meeting with Jackson, watching her was like seeing a slow-motion car crash. You know it's coming, and you can't look away. She was trying to hold it together, but every day her composure slipped a little more, and I wasn't about to make it easier for her. Things came to a head the night Ava stopped by the house. To be fair, I hadn't planned it. It was Ava's idea. She texted me earlier saying she wanted to drop off a book we talked about. Olivia was home, and I thought, why not? I was curious to see how she'd react. Call it petty, call it calculated. I'd earned this moment. When Ava arrived, Olivia's face was a perfect mix of surprise and irritation. She forced a smile and greeted Ava warmly enough, but I could see her jaw tightening. Ava, completely unaware of the brewing storm, handed me the book and casually plopped onto the couch like everything was normal. "So, what's everyone up to this weekend?" Ava asked, her tone light and friendly. Olivia stiffened, her smile tightening into a thin line. "We haven't made plans yet," she said, her voice carrying an edge. "Adam's been keeping himself busy lately." I shrugged, barely hiding a smirk. "Just trying to enjoy life, you know?" The silence that followed was thick, the kind that could cut glass. Ava glanced between us, clearly sensing the tension but unsure of its source. "Well, I should probably get going," she said, standing up. "I just wanted to drop this off. Enjoy the book, Adam." Olivia stayed silent as Ava walked out, the air in the room growing heavier with each passing second. The moment the door closed, she turned to me, her eyes blazing. "What the hell was that?" "What was what?" I asked, playing dumb. "You and Ava," she snapped. Why is she even here? And why does she act like she knows you so well? I leaned back in my chair, savoring the rare sight of Olivia on edge. Ava's been a good friend, I said calmly. She actually listens when I talk. Maybe you should try it sometime. Her face turned red, and for a moment I thought she might scream. Instead, she clenched her fist and hissed, "Are you sleeping with her?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was too ironic. My laughter only made her angrier. "Seriously? Coming from you, that's rich. What's that supposed to mean?" she demanded, her voice rising. "You know exactly what it means, Olivia," I said, my tone icy. "Do you really want to play this game? Because I guarantee you won't like how it ends." She opened her mouth, ready to fire back, but no words came out. Instead, she stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I could hear her pacing inside, probably trying to figure out her next move. Meanwhile, I stayed on the couch, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. Watching her squirm was undeniably satisfying, but I couldn't help wondering just how far this would go and how much damage it might cause. The morning after our explosive argument, Olivia acted like nothing had happened. Classic her. Sweep it under the rug and hope it disappears. But I wasn't about to let it slide this time. The pieces were finally in place, and I was ready to pull the rug out from under her. I texted Ava and Jackson, asking them to meet me at our house that evening. I kept it vague, just saying there were things we needed to discuss. Ava was understandably hesitant, but I convinced her it was important. Jackson, to my surprise, agreed almost immediately. Maybe guilt had been gnawing at him, or maybe he just wanted closure. Either way, it worked for me. But when Olivia got home that evening, I casually told her we were having company. She eyed me warily. "Who's coming over?" "You'll see," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "It should be an interesting evening." Her face fell slightly, but she didn't push further. Instead, she poured herself a glass of wine, something she only did when she was nervous, and paced the kitchen while I sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Olivia froze mid-sip, her glass trembling slightly. I got up, opened the door, and greeted Ava and Jackson with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Olivia's face went ghostly pale when she saw them. "Uh, what's going on?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Take a seat," I said, gesturing to the couch. "All of you." Ava hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but she sat down without argument. Jackson hovered awkwardly near the door before finally sitting next to her. Olivia, however, stayed rooted to the spot, glaring at me like I'd just dropped a ball. "This isn't funny, Adam," she said, her voice clipped. "No," I replied calmly. "It's not funny, but it is necessary." I turned to Jackson. "Do you want to start, or should I?" Jackson's eyes went wide. "What? No, fine." I cut him off, turning to Olivia with a cold, hard stare. "I know about the affair, Olivia. You and Jackson, the dinners, the texts, the sneaking around. I've known for weeks." Her jaw dropped, and for a brief moment she looked genuinely stunned, like she couldn't believe I'd figured it out. Then, true to form, she did what she always did. She lied. "That's not true," she said quickly. "You're being paranoid. Jackson and I are just friends. He'll tell you." I glanced at Jackson, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the couch cushions. "Go ahead, Jackson," I said. "Tell her." He opened his mouth, then closed it again, his face turning red. Finally, he muttered, "I'm sorry, Olivia. Can't." Olivia whirled on him, her eyes blazing. "What do you mean, you can't?" "I mean, it's over," Jackson said, his voice shaking. "I told you that. I told you I couldn't do this anymore." Olivia's face twisted with fury, and for a second I thought she might slap him. No, it didn't, but instead she turned on me. "This is your fault," she spat, her voice venomous. "You've been so distant, so cold. What was I supposed to do? Just sit around and wait for you to care about me again?" I laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "Don't you dare try to blame this on me. You made your choices, Olivia, and now you're dealing with the consequences." Ava, who had been sitting silently, finally found her voice. I can't believe this," she said, her voice trembling. "Olivia, how could you? To Adam? To me? I trusted you." Olivia's head snapped toward Ava, panic flashing across her face. Ava, I didn't mean. Save it, Ava said firmly, standing up. I don't want to hear it. As Ava grabbed her bag and headed for the door, I turned to Olivia one last time. You wanted to play games, Olivia? Well, game over. Fallout from that night was everything that I could have hoped for, and then some. Olivia was blindsided, completely caught off guard. For someone who prided herself on always being in control, watching her world fall apart was oddly satisfying. After Ava stormed out and Jackson practically bolted, Olivia turned on me. How could you do this to me? She shouted, tears streaming down her face. You humiliated me. I couldn't help but laugh, shaking my head in disbelief. Humiliated you? Olivia, you've been lying to me for months. You humiliated yourself. All I did was make sure the truth came out. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to stop her. Don't bother. I'm done listening to your excuses. For the first time, she seemed to understand that I wasn't just angry. I was done. Her shoulders slumped, and she sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. I didn't mean for it to get this far, he mumbled. Spare me the regret, I said, my voice icy. You weren't sorry when you were sneaking around with Jackson. You're just sorry you got caught. The next morning, I made my intentions clear. Over breakfast, I laid it out flatly. I'm filing for divorce. She didn't say anything at first, just stared down at her coffee cup like it held the answers to all her problems. For a moment, I thought she might accept it quietly, but this was Olivia. She wasn't about to let things end on my terms. Later that day, she tried a new tactic. Anger. You're no saint, Adam, she snapped. What about you and Ava? You think I didn't notice the way you've been cozying up to her? I smirked, leaning back in my chair. Ha! Funny you should mention that. Ava? She was part of my plan. I wanted you to know what it feels like to doubt someone you thought you could trust, to see the cracks and wonder if you're losing them. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a split second, I thought she might throw something at me. You used her, she said, her voice shaking with rage. No, Olivia, I replied firmly. I didn't use Ava. I respected her, something you never did for me. That shut her up. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, but I didn't care. The wheels were already in motion. I had everything I needed for the divorce. Texts, emails, proof of her lies. Olivia could try to twist the story all she wanted, but the truth was solidly out of the picture. Word got back to me, through mutual acquaintances, that he'd blocked Olivia's number and was actively avoiding her at work. As for Ava, she cut ties with Olivia entirely. A few days later, she messaged me. I'm sorry I didn't see the sign sooner, she wrote. You didn't deserve this. I hope you can move on. You deserve better. She was right. I did deserve better. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me what you think about that story. Have a good day, and bye.